In this class we're going to talk about project methodology. Essentially what we're going to do is to look at the various steps that should be undertaken to have a robust methodology in project design, implementation and delivery. It should set out the framework for project managers who are about to undertake let's say detailed or even expensive project work. So it's important to have a framework, and that's what we're going to deal with in this class. A project methodology systems approach refers to the implementation of a project. So we're looking at the implementation of a project, but a project itself, of course, is made up from the initial idea, then the various resources that were used in the project development, the organizational structure of that project development group, the issues that were confronted and how they were dealt with, and into the testing phase, the prototyping, and finally, of course, into the stage where it's delivered and ready for final use. Project managers must understand the project methodology in order to manage the project effectively. If project managers are vague about the methods that are employed within the project, then clearly the project managers can't lead. They can't give example, they can't adequately problem solve. So project managers need to have detailed knowledge of the project, but also of the techniques that are being employed, the way in which the flow of production should take place in order to optimize the use of the resources. So they should look at a wide variety of issues, and it's important that the project managers understand the methodology, understand how the project is designed, what's required from the project, what are the outputs, if you like, the deliverables of the project, and looking at these, but also looking at the way in which all of the inputs fit together, problem solve, deal with issues and resolve issues as they go through, deal with staff, lead the team, and fit the project together, bring it in on time and on budget. So project managers have a big task, but it all starts with them having a clear vision of the methodology that's going to be employed. The aim of a project manager is to devise a project methodology that encompasses and interlinks all elements of a project. Clearly, the methodology must be inclusive. It must look at all parts of the project. Otherwise, the project manager will be focusing in on some parts of the project, perhaps to the detriment of the other parts. And when the final project's delivered, that's exactly where the weaknesses will be, because they didn't receive the care and attention that they needed. So it's important that the project manager devises a more holistic methodology, one that covers the whole project, but can also be framed in a way that enables the project manager to break it into sections, break it into tasks, and assign it to different members of the team with varying expertise in different areas. And in this way, their expertise, if you like, the division of labour, can be brought to bear on the issues, and there's a more efficient output. But also, of course, holistically, one which covers all parts of the project, so that the final product will be more robust as a consequence. So what is a system? Well, a system is the interlink of components and processes which are integrated together to produce or achieve a common goal or purpose. And that's what we mean by a system. It's interlinkages. that the different parts of the system are linked. They're linked in some way. They may be linked technically, or they may be linked through process. That one process feeds into another process, which ultimately goes down the line and leads ultimately to the final product. But the final product will be assembled from all of these sub-assemblies. So the system can be viewed as a number of subsystems which are working to achieve the best set of outcomes, and these best set of outcomes for that subsystem then means that the subsystem is good, it's ready to be used, and then it will be assembled into the final system, which is the more integrated final product. So projects can be broken down. That's the point. They can be broken down into small parts and then assembled into the final product or the final task at the end. In regards to projects, a systems approach is necessary to provide a holistic perspective where all project phases are integrated with effective feedback loops. Now that's what I was saying earlier. It is important that there is a holistic view of the project, but that does not stop the project manager from breaking down the project into subsystems, into smaller tasks. These smaller tasks will then be aligned with the competencies and experiences of the staff and of the equipment available and what's required to complete the subsystems. But ultimately all of these will have to be assembled into the final project, which is the more holistic product that's required, and any issues associated with the subsystems or with the final product, there will be feedback loops detailing any issues, any queries, any criticisms, any points or any errors, any faults. Any of these will be fed back and will be dealt with before the final delivery of the product, or of the project, I should say. Now the project lifecycle as a system. So we're going to look at the project lifecycle. So the project lifecycle means it starts and it ends. That's the lifecycle. It starts, something happens in between, and then it ends. A project methodology system is the integration of interlinked phases that function together to produce a set of deliverables in each phase. That's just another way of saying that this project we're talking about can be broken into subsystems, into different smaller parts. They are then processed and they will have outcomes. Those outcomes are then put together, are interlinked with other outcomes from other subsystems to make up the final project that was required. So the final project can be seen as the aggregation of subsystems. Now, project management processes. Well, we can identify 4 broad headings. The initiation stage, that's the process that starts the whole thing. It may be a requirement by a particular functional head within a company who requires a certain product or project to be undertaken to examine the possibility of changing production, or it may be some project related to new ways of marketing a product, or the implementation of a local area network, whatever it is. There is many different projects, but these projects are good for the business because they will lead to economies down the line, but they must first be examined and their efficacy examined to see if they're suitable for that business. So there is an initiation stage, or a stage where it's just proposal. It's just been set out. But once it's been set out and once it's been accepted that this would be a good idea, this project is a good idea, it should be pursued, then they move to a planning stage. The planning stage is much more extensive. We'll talk about these more in the coming slides. Going on to the execution process. Once it gets through planning, it's work done. This is when it's executed. This is when it's done. And when it's done, it's closed off. The project is closed down. So projects have limited timescale. Projects come into existence to solve a particular problem or investigate a particular issue and then finish. So they are not ongoing processes within businesses. They have particular lifespans, the lifespan just to deal with the issue under consideration. Now, the project methodology plan will identify all activities involved in the project and develop a project lifecycle. So look at all of the activities that are involved in a project. So when a project is proposed, the project manager, who should be appointed at an early stage, should look at all of the issues associated with the project, try to make a note of each one of them, and develop a project life cycle to see how long it will take and what are the various stages that it will go through. Following the project management process, initiate, plan, execute and close, break each phase down and complete as mini projects. So we have 4 parts to the project. We have the initiate, get it started. Someone wants the project looked into, this particular project. That's the initiation stage, get it started. Then plan it. That's another phase, another stage. Then execute it and then close. So we have 4. We have 4 parts, and these can be seen as mini projects, these 4 parts. Let's look at the initiation process. It's the initial starting point of a project. This stage identifies the need for a project. At this stage, the proposal for a particular project is examined to see if it's worthwhile pursuing. The initiation process really undertakes a critical evaluation of the need for such a project. It examines the rationale, it examines why the project should take place. It doesn't get involved with what will be essentially the parts of the project, or how the project will be set up, or what will be examined in the project. It just really deals with, will this project enhance the business? Will this project, if it's successful, yield results for the business? So it's looking at the need for the project. The initiation process is subdivided into the following activities. The following phases outline the key activities, documents required during this process. So the initiation process can be subdivided into the following activities. So, initiation process. Well, appoint the phase owner. So who will be the person who deals with this initiation process? The phase owner is the project sponsor or project manager. This person is responsible for all for allowing the project to go ahead. So this is the start. This is the starting point, and therefore it's reasonable to suggest that at this point the project could be killed off, or the project could get the go-ahead. And in order for that to happen, there must be some person responsible for the project. And this is known as the phase owner, the person who is being appointed to look into this particular project to see if it's worthwhile doing. The phase owner must make a go or no-go decision. This is normally based on some sort of feasibility study, and it normally is examined in detail as to what's involved, what are the costs, what changes to the organisation will the project bring about, what are the benefits, but what's the likelihood of success. So it has to make quite a big decision, because the company may be prepared to spend quite a lot of resources into this particular project. Then write the project charter. This is the overall plan of the project, including objectives and approach to achieving them. So write the overall project charter. Write up what the project is about, what the plan is, what are the objectives, what's expected, and what approach should be used to achieve them. How should the project team be constructed? Who should lead that particular team? And where should the work take place? And what resources should they have? What's the likely budget? So it's quite a detailed document looking into this particular proposal. And then appoint a project manager. The project manager is the person who will coordinate all of the activities relating to this project, will deal with the members of the team, will deal with issues associated with faults and failures as well as successes, will deal with HRM issues in the team, will deal with linkages between one part of the project and the next. So it's the project manager who will drive it. The project manager is, in a sense, the ongoing project champion. The phase owner is the one who has suggested it. The phase owner is the one who has argued for it and has made the decision to go and make the project. But the project manager is the one who is the day-to-day person responsible for the project. Then assign company resources in the again in this initiation process. The project charter outlines the project resources, project team, and the requirements. So the budget should be really set out here. The size of the team, the composition of the team, the skills, competencies, abilities, experiences, as well as the hardware, the equipment that will be needed, and the space for the team to work. And manage the startup meeting. So at this stage, the phase owner will manage the startup meeting and get the project started, introduce the project purpose to key stakeholders and the project team. So introduce the project, talk about its benefits, talk about the issues, present a vision of what the project will bring about and what it is. The planning process, which is the next one on the line, provides a detailed overview of the project plan. Now the following phases outline the key activities and documents required during this planning process. So here we have our 4 parts to the project management process. We're on now to the second part, the planning process. So identify phase objectives. So try to work out what are the objectives. Setting objectives, time, cost, quality, and the outcomes, the deliverables. Set these and identify them. So set out the parameters of the project. How many people in the team, what skills, what abilities, what backgrounds, who will head the team, who is the project manager, where will the project take place, what resources will it use, what's the timings for the different stages, what's the timing for the final project delivery. So identify the various objectives and develop a build method. The work breakdown structure is used to develop the deliverables and build method. Break down the various tasks and then set out a program of how the project is going to be run in practice. Develop an execution strategy. The resources required to complete the project. Available resources can be in-house, contractors, or outsourcing. So look at what resources are required and try to work out what's required in order to execute this particular strategy, to bring it to fruition, to deliver it. So the objectives have been identified, the build method, how it's going to be done, has been identified, and now develop the strategy, develop the execution strategy, how it's going to be done in practice. The more detailed planning. Will the resources be developed in-house or will they be bought in? Are the resources available elsewhere in the market? What's more efficient? Check resource availability. The availability of resources will influence the project execution strategy and schedule. So check the availability of resources. If a project is obscure and uses rarely used materials or machinery or needs particular tooling on the machinery, it may be far more difficult to develop. However, if everything's more freely available, then it will be easier to conduct the project. Having said that, projects which are difficult to do may be the more profitable because the complexity of the project acts as a barrier to entry to competitors who may be put off in trying to run similar projects. But check the resource availability to see where the resources are or if they have to be developed in-house. Develop a project schedule. Development of a timeline, for example, to ensure all deliverables can be achieved. This involves all knowledge areas and trade-offs. In other words, look at the project schedule. It could be use a Gantt chart and carefully work out where one task ends, the next task starts, and look at who's involved and optimize the use of the resources within the project team. Now the execution process. Well, this phase is the actually the planning takes place, takes effect. All necessary activities are carried out in order to bring the project to completion. So this phase is the actually planning taking effect. It's the plan being implemented. The following phase and outlines the key activities and documents required during this particular execution phase. So here we have our 4 parts. We've now moved on to the execution phase. Now, this is when we're actually doing it. This is moved on from planning. Now it's implementation, it's execution. So issue instructions. Instructions are issued to the project team. They're instructed what they need to do. Who needs to do what, what's expected of them, timescales, and so on. That's issued. Then there's monitoring and control. The project team performance is monitored and all activities are controlled to ensure deliverables will be achieved in the set timeline. So monitoring to make sure that the different personnel within the project team are achieving what's expected of them. If there are failings for whatever reason, they're examined, the rationale or the cause of those is understood, remedial measures may be taken, but it's important to try and keep all members of the project team in line, to try to keep them in line with their set objectives. So they receive tasks to complete, they should complete them within that timescale. So that's monitored. They may need additional support. It may turn out that there are issues that were not anticipated or false arise for whatever reason. But at this stage, the project manager should be able to reorientate perhaps different parts of the team and bring in additional support. But it's important that all of the different operators within the team, all members of the project team, are able to achieve their outputs as per the timeline that was agreed. Also, to manage scope changes. Scope changes are logged and assessed and decisions are communicated. Sometimes the project is aiming to achieve certain outcomes and management may want to change it to achieve additional output or additional functions. It may think that this project is suitable if it's amended to do something else as well. So it's important to understand that as the projects are worked through, there may be re-evaluation of the project by senior management, who perhaps may discuss it separately and come up with additional requirements. Well, this will have to be managed and dealt with by the phase owner and also by the project manager, which may in fact be one and the same person, but it will have to be dealt with there, and there may be implications for the budget and the timeline and so on. Manage the build method. Well, changes to the build method are managed and accessed. The build method is agreed during the planning phase, but in practice, when it's been implemented, there may be issues that were unforeseen, and these may have to be changed during the process of execution, when the project is actually being done. So there may have to be modifications to what was planned. And manage configuration. Operational changes must be managed. The project manager may have to deal with HR, human resource issues. The project manager may have to deal with faulty raw materials, or may have to deal with oversights in the planning system that allowed different components to come through which cannot be connected, or they're not compatible. In terms of design, they don't fit together in the way anticipated. So it's for the project manager to deal with these issues and to get them resolved as quickly as possible so as to ensure that the project can continue. And also, at the execution stage, when it's done, issue a certificate of completion. When the project is finished, issue a certificate of completion. The project is now over. Once it's been executed and it's all done, that project is over. And the completion certificates are issued by the project manager. It's done, so that project is finished. And projects have limited timescale. Projects come into existence at a particular time and they end at a particular time. They're not like the more operational functions in the business which run day in, day out, run on a continuous basis. The projects will start and finish at particular times. Once it's finished, a certificate of completion is issued by the project manager. Now the closing process. Well, the closing phase confirms the project has been completed and the deliverables measured and achieved. So the closing process is finishing off. It's closing down the project. It's reassigning the personnel. It's reassigning the equipment and the resources. It's closing it down because the project has now been completed and the outcomes have been determined. This is the handover and termination of the project. So at this stage, the project is handed back to management, handed back in particular to that part of management that commissioned the project in the first place. So it's handed over and the project is terminated. Now the following phases outline the key activities and documents required during the closing down phase. So here's our 4 parts again. Now we've moved to the closing process at the very bottom. Now verify commissioning process. How the deliverables will be communicated, transferred, tested and commissioned. So there are outcomes from the project. Now they must be communicated to the department that commissioned the project. All of the details and findings should be transferred, and the results of any tests also transferred, and then perhaps there should be some commissioning documentation handed over to help that department, should they decide to adopt that as a process within their department, to help them to commission it, to set it up. And this could be instruction manual, or it could be a video, or some sort of communications item which helps the department see if they can adopt the project in practice. Manage receiving process. The deliverables are received with all composing documents. So at this stage, everything should be handed over to the department that commissioned it, and documentation, as I said, should be clear, well set out, and all of the findings, including issues that have to be perhaps watched out for in case of breakage, or issues which were not tested fully, or issues which perhaps could not be tested fully because there were resources or issues about timings or whatever it was. So any reservations that the project team have should appear in the documentation. But a good project shouldn't have any of those. It should be clear as to whether the project is adopted or not adopted. So it should not be left to the commissioning department to again face uncertainty and not knowing whether they should take it on or not take it on. There should be a clear recommendation as to adopt or not adopt. Manage commissioning process. Well, inspection of the deliverables to confirm they have been completed as per the project plan. So the deliverables, the outcomes of the project should be inspected. And the outcomes may be a particular service and how the service is going to be performed in practice. So a demonstration of how that particular service would be delivered would be the deliverable. That would be perhaps a video of how the service would be delivered, and that video would be the outcome of the exercise. In other situations, it may be a particular component or a part of a machine or a new product, or it could be whatever the project was. Manage the handover phase and handing over of the completed project to the right stakeholder or client. So hand it over. Make sure that there is clarity about all of the issues, that there is good communications with the stakeholder, that they understand what was involved, they have an opportunity to question the project manager, they have an opportunity to perhaps trial run the project with the involvement of the project manager, so that it's tested before their eyes, and then at that stage the handover is complete. So managed termination process. Officially close the project, end of contractors, close all accounts, assets and team closure, so that that project is complete, it's packed up, and the resources and the team who have expertise in managing projects of this type, of course, will still be available for other projects should they be required. So the very last part of this is to conduct a review of the phase. This would be for management, so that they can see what issues were confronted, how the issues were resolved, looks at all of the ways in which resources were deployed, looks at the role of the project manager, and just generally presents a full picture of that particular project. And that will help senior management in deciding as to whether to have future projects and how they will configure future projects, how they will go about setting them up, and how they will go about optimizing the use of resources and achieving good results. So those are the resources, or the resource that was widely used throughout this particular talk. But that's all we're going to deal with in this session. That ends our talk on project management and looking at the methodology of project management. So let's leave it at that and say thank you for watching.